Brilliant. So you two kind of get like a one-on-one with us two speakers. Nice small audience today. So I think it's good morning. Good morning to you both. And great to meet you finally in the flesh, Sankal. Fantastic. Looking forward to today. So today is really exciting for me because if you look on the board, what I do is I run my own business, but I'm also a business coach and executive coach. So my passion is working with people, working with entrepreneurs, high performers, professionals to help them get more out of themselves and achieve more in their life. So when I heard about the topic entering politics early, there's so many different things I wanted to apply for at the Women Economic Forum, entrepreneurship, mindset, that are wonderful topics. But I believe politics is such a fantastic, engaging topic to talk about. And to be really honest with everyone here, one of my goals in the future is to go into politics. So this is something that I'm really inspired by. And I'd say over the next 15, 20 years, I want to really create more of a movement in politics. But for now, I'm taking smaller steps because I love what I get to do for my business. But also, politics, as you'll see, it's a very fast-paced environment. It's a very ruthless environment. So I actually enter talk about this particular talk from my experience as someone of, I like to say, the younger generation. Hopefully I still qualify as that, to really talk about what do I see as someone who's really trying to enter politics today. What do I see as actually the really exciting opportunities? What do I see as the current challenges in politics for the younger generation too that want to enter? So how we're going to do today's talk, me and Sankal had a chat earlier, is that we're going to keep our talks really nice and short and sweet, and then after we'll both get up and let's have a conversation with you guys, and anybody else that walks in. So when I think about entering politics early, I think it's a really exciting conversation, because just like the Women's Economic Forum, what they do incredibly well is they're having a conversation that I think needs to be had, a really important, prominent conversation that needs to be had about giving more voice to the greater opportunities around the world for women empowerment, equality. It's the same with politics. There's a conversation that needs to be had that isn't had very often. In fact, this year has been a really big transformative year for politics. We've had the greatest diversity, especially in Britain. It's an achievement that's really welcome to see such great people from a variety of different backgrounds. An increasing number of women in politics, which is fantastic. This is something I hope to see more in the future, that more women are coming to politics, and more people from a variety of different backgrounds are entering politics, because that's what brings people together. People with different thinking, people with different ideologies that can challenge each other. And I think politics does definitely need more of that. So this year, Britain celebrated that, and they welcome that. It's a fantastic achievement to see such interesting, exciting, new thinking coming to the political world. But also, I feel that real change, especially when we talk about the younger generation, when you speak, real change comes from a grassroots level up. And I really encourage more of the younger generation to get into politics as just what we need. And it's really, really exciting because I see that happening more and more in the future. But right now, there's just a couple of challenges I want to touch on that I feel are, let's say, getting in the way of the youth entering politics. And what makes the younger generation actually interested in this as a group for their future, for their career. Because when we think about what typical jobs we look at today, when you come out of university, when you're looking into the job market, most people typically apply for an accountancy role, a doctor role, a medical role, maybe a business role. But very few look at politics, and I just think for a number of reasons. So I feel that the generation today can do a lot more to help politics be a really favourable route for youngsters these days. I mean, the first big challenge I see is that the image politics has. When you hear the word politician, especially in Britain, there's a horrible reaction that most people have, because unfortunately the image today in British politics is not favourable for the younger generation to be actually interested in entering such a field. Why would they? I mean, when we look at, for example, there's an instance, earlier, I think it was this year, towards the end of last year, our current, or in fact the past Foreign Minister Boris Johnson made a remark about how certain women that wear a hijab and burqa look like letterboxes or post boxes in Britain, which is a completely horrific statement to make, where we live in such a country built on diversity and foundation, where we have a number of cultures coming together. It's just a comment you can't make. And something like that will only alienate the younger generation. That the image of politics has got to change from a group of people that look like they're self-serving to something that brings people together a lot more, with a lot more compassion, a lot more heart, a lot more soul. And that's one of the biggest things missing in politics right now, is changing the image to make it look like not a group of people that come from the elite universities, but actually people that are servants of the public, because this is what politics is about. Being a servant of the public, not self-serving from the public, being a servant of the public that gives back to your nation and also collaborates with the world, the countries around. So it's not just fighting just for your country, but working with other countries around to create the greatest growth in all economies. You know, I believe as a coach that to thrive in any field, whether it's parenting, whether it's being an executive director, to be the best in anything, you've got to be an incredible human being first. And I would love to see more of that in politics. Leading with heart, leading with compassion, leading with, thank you. Just leading with a lot more compassion, and that's the one thing missing right now. That putting more extraordinary thinking and more extraordinary beings into politics first, so that what flows naturally is policies that really touch the hearts of people around. And that will change the image of politics. Because right now, people are very alienated. I love it. I love politics because I see a vision of what could be. If things stay the way they are right now, it will alienate the most elite, the highest talent, the best thinking, and they'll go into alternative jobs. What we need is the smartest thinking to come to politics. This is my vision, to create the image of politics that this is the place to be. Where as a youngster, if you enter, you can create and facilitate real change in government that will touch the lives of people around you. If that is the image, that's how politics looks, you'll just get more of the best talent, slowly and surely. The second challenge that I see is that it feels to me that, especially from my experience, the parties in politics are actually getting in the way of a real politics. It just feels to me, from the news that I hear, from people that I speak to, whether you support one party or the other, it's like a football club, such intense rivalry. Instead, we're not coming together and working together. In Britain, we have the Conservative Party, we have the Labour Party, and they're always at each other's throats instead of working together.
But that's also not just the case of Britain, that's the thing most nations face, especially India is facing that to like another level altogether. I
can imagine. And Indian politics is interesting. It's something I want to immerse myself in a lot more. And I remember years ago, when I entered the political route, I'd say slightly naive, and I remember I mentioned this comment to a friend of mine. I said, why do they have parties? What if we just got rid of the party system? And he said, well, actually, that's one of the things that politics has brought in to create equality and to hear people's voices a lot more. Well, in my opinion today, that is the very thing that gets in the way. Having such intense party focus that if you look at the younger generation, one of my contacts within the Houses of Parliament has said the younger generation are not interested in parties, they're interested in individual policy. You see, parties is just like an elite membership club. The problem is that in our politics today, especially in Britain, one of the parties is known as being Islamophobic. Another party is known as being anti-Semitic, institutionally anti-Semitic, within the heart and culture of the parties. The party system might have played a role, but the more we focus on emphasis on the party, we're coming away from policy. And that's one of the challenges we've seen in Brexit. If you're around in London, you can't go anywhere without hearing those words Brexit. Every single place you go, there's Brexit being discussed. Brexit over breakfast, Brexit over lunch, Brexit over dinner, Brexit when you're sleeping, you just can't run away from it. And one of the reasons is because the parties have divided what could be the great nation that is Britain, or the great countries, India, any other country in Asia, any other country across the world. When the parties come together, that's when the country is the greatest. Not through separation, but through unity. And I feel that right now, the party and the ideologies are separating the younger generations. One of the other challenges that I see is actually getting anywhere in Parliament these days is it's a little bit difficult. You've got to look at the entry point to become a politician and create real change. You've got to make that more accessible. You've got to make that easier for the younger generation. One of the things that I heard recently is that to become a member of Parliament, you have to invest around 4 million rupees to get to an MP. It's 40,000 British pounds. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a huge investment to then go to a job where you are sacrificing a lot of your life. You see, I used to not like politicians years ago, but until I really did my research, I see how hard they really have it, how much pressure they have, how much sacrifice they have to, in fact, serve the public while investing their own finances and their resources, printing materials, their own travel costs, just to get to that place where they can be a member of Parliament. So maybe perhaps that's something that needs to be removed, because if we're going to attract the best talent, money should not be an obstacle that gets in the way.
Absolutely.
It should not be an obstacle that gets in the way of the best talent coming to politics. So that's something that I feel fundamentally needs to change, and it should become easier to attract the best talent into politics. The fourth point that I have that I think is a huge, huge barrier is change really accepted? Is change really welcomed? In London, on the 15th of February, it was a really exciting day. A lot of the schools took the day off and they went to Parliament and they campaigned about climate change. And then on the 15th of March, kids around the world did that as well. They campaigned on climate change. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was such an incredible movement from the younger generation speaking up and projecting their voice. The challenge was, there was one comment by a lady called Andrea Leadsom, who's the head of the House of Commons, so someone in a very senior position of authority. She came out and said, they weren't campaigning, it was just called truancy. The definition of truancy is leaving school without a good reason. Without a good reason. The minute the younger generation speak up and they're actually sharing their voice, they have a platform to speak up, the politicians are shouting them down and saying that you're leaving school for no good reason. I don't call climate change a bad reason for leaving school. I don't think the polar ice caps melting, the ozone layer being destroyed and depleted, the water levels rising. Climate change is a very severe risk and it's a very severe issue. The question is change really accepted right now in Parliament? Are they looking for disruption or are they looking for more of the same? If we have the image of government, whether it's in India, whether it's in Britain, whether it's in Australia, wherever you're from, if we have an image of things will constantly stay the same, why would you want to jump onto that bandwagon? Why would you want to get involved in politics if you can't be a vehicle for change, but you'll just be another pawn that goes through that stress, that pressure, and it's just part of the same club? Change needs to be accepted, and this is why I fundamentally believe that if we have more of the younger generation coming into politics, change won't be just a great idea, it will be an inevitability. It will be a matter of time. And this is something I am really excited about myself. Seeing more people that are very passionate about creating change coming into the political field and slowly over time cutting through policy, cutting through what has been to create something new, something exciting, something so powerful, something that really does serve the people, something that does serve the nation, which is why we are in politics after all, to be a servant of the public, not to be served by the public. And that's a big distinction that needs to be understood, that I don't think is being heard. And the final point I want to make, before I bring Sankalp on, is that there's a lack of transparency today in politics. There's a big, big, big lack of transparency. Whether you look at the situation around Brexit, whether you look at a number of different politicians campaigning, one of my favourite politicians in the past that used to come to India quite a lot is Nick Clegg. I used to love that politician in Britain because he was a great human being. He was a really fantastic human being that was just misled. When he came into Parliament, he said to the students that he was going to cut the student fees. And all the students were excited. Lib Dems rose to power a lot more. They had a lot of backing, a lot of popularity. The problem was when he came to government with the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, they had to reverse that policy. Not only did he not cut student fees, they increased it from £3,000 to £10,000 a year. Instantly like that, his party's popularity crashed and he lost his seat in Parliament. That there's a lot of these claims being given to the public that the politicians don't walk their talk. The same thing with Brexit. Now, I wasn't really going to share my views on Brexit here live, and you can ask me one-on-one, but it's a big mess. Like, I've honestly changed my view about what the way forward is, because when Brexit happens to the UK, it's not a UK issue, it's a global issue. How it impacts trade across the world, how it impacts the relationship we have with India, we have with Australia. Opportunities will open up, opportunities will close down. But where it's done on Brexit right now, it's such a mess. What is Brexit for? For the people. My views, let's put it back to the people. Let's ask the people once more, what do they really want? The reason we're in this mess is Lord Sugar, one of the famous entrepreneurs in the UK and London, he's recently mentioned that if you look at the way Brexit and politics is conducted by, I'm not going to say who, but a few members of Parliament, who at the time said, if we leave the European Union, we will save the NHS 30 or 3, I can't remember the figure, so it's 300 million a week. We will do this, we will do that. The truth is, all of those facts are incorrect. And there's a lot of misleading, to the point that Lord Sugar said, if these politicians were in business and they advised the board with such facts, these politicians would be put in prison. They would be put in prison if they're in business. Yet, when they're in government, it seems like there's a completely different set of rules that they can live by. Politicians need to live by the same rules as every other member of this country. Otherwise, are you really another member of this country? Are you really another member? You see, this is where the elitism comes in, or a lady yesterday spoke about patriarchy. where there's an elitist group of men ruling society. There is a small element of that that's being eroded in politics with the rise of women in politics, which I think is so welcome. I'm excited about that, because that's the way things should be in every environment, but this is massive, it's huge. So in terms of transparency, there needs to be greater transparency. Should politicians really mislead people in their country because of their own views? Absolutely not. And that's one of the biggest points that if we could really work on and change and create a transparency and an element of truth, whereas what we share with the public is what is genuinely correct, or closer to the truth, there will be more trust, be more willingness for the younger generation, people like myself, people who will be your future children, will come into politics, not because it's exciting, which I really think it is, but because it's so rewarding, by doing the right thing, by really helping people across the nation through incredible policy that creates change on healthcare, on well-being, on monetary policies, things that really do make the difference. And there's nothing more fulfilling than doing just that. So for me, from my current experience, I feel that these are 5 things that if we could touch on, and if we could remove these barriers to entry, we would attract some of the best talent into politics. So what would it take to do that? Well, it doesn't just come from the bottom up. It doesn't just come from saying to the younger generation, you need to get into politics. You need to share your voice, because they've got an incredible voice. There's so much I can learn from a 15-year-old about their view on the world. There's so much we have to learn, but they have got to be heard. So it's got to come from a top-down point of view as well, where politicians need to be more humbled. Because the truth is that everybody behind the scenes in media, when I was speaking to a media person, when I was going to this politics show recently, she said, just ask whatever questions you've got to these guys, because the politicians don't know what they're doing. They're all right now in a little bit of a mess. This is the air that I have around myself. So when this is changed, politics will be one of the fields that will be up there, like medicine, like accountancy, like law. It will be a lucrative industry to be in. And I can't wait for that day to happen. And it will happen soon. It won't just be an idea, it will be an inevitability, because we are getting there. And change is inevitable if we keep taking the steps that we're doing so far. So that's my little piece on entering politics early. It's an exciting space, and thank you for listening. I'd love to welcome Sankar.
So, first off, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think Raghav, his talk was brilliant. He covered almost all the facts that we need to know about the youth and politics. So what I'm thinking is I'll do something a little different. I'll give you all personal stories, facts, anecdotes of my experiences with politicians, diplomats from around the world. So my name is Sankalp Mohan Sharma. I'm a youth leader working towards the environment, working on sustainable development and water conservation. I run an organization called the Such Foundation, which aims to start the biggest global youth network of young leaders around the world, working on each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. Now, what has happened in the past few years is I have started working with these brilliant young leaders around the world, and I have noticed some brilliant leadership skills, inclination towards politics, and a lot of humble hard work for the society amongst them. And let me give you a few examples. I am based out of a city in South India called Bangalore, and there we have this young politician who has just started his own party called Anil Shetty. Now, how many of us are familiar with what flex banners are? Yeah. So these are flex banners, and these are almost like plastic. They are very, very bad for the environment and are causing a lot of harm. But when it comes to countries like India, whenever an MP or a local MLA or a chief minister even had a birthday, we would have metro pillars filled with these plastic banners. Happy birthday, happy birthday. All these young people putting it up, young party members. On the chief minister's birthday in Bangalore, you would see at least 10,000 flex banners across the city just wishing him a happy birthday. So what did Anil Shetty do? He decided to go a peaceful way and call all the politicians of Karnataka on one particular day and cut a huge 10-kilo cake, saying that today is everyone's birthday and I request you all to stop putting flex banners. How did that work? Not at all. The next day was some other MP's birthday and we had another 100 banners. What happened next? He said, the politicians aren't listening, what do I do? And he, along with his young team members of 50, 100 people in Bangalore, went and literally painted black on all the faces of these flex banners. And now these big parties were really shocked, they were angry, they were irritated. and the very next day he was in jail. He was behind bars for doing something against these big, strong political figures. But he didn't stop there. He went on the next time and removed all the flex banners one particular night across Bangalore and kept going and going and going. But he was not successful until he started approaching the law. And this 5 years of his journey became fructified just last year when, as per law of the Bangalore High Court, Karnataka High Court, flex banners have been banned in Karnataka. And this was done solely by a youth leader of our city. Let's take another example. I also feel that youth politicians or politicians of any age group, they are not supposed to be celebrities. And that is what they're trying to be these days. They would walk into public events, wave hands, take selfies. I'm not against any of that. What I'm trying to say is they actually need to serve the public. Now, for this I want to give you a brilliant example of our late Chief Minister of Goa, Manohar Parrikar. He was one of the most brilliant politicians of our country. He rode a bicycle to his Chief Minister's office several times. He was also the former Defence Minister. And he has the most humble background. You could meet him at any point. He would be willing to serve the society. You would never see him like the other politicians in big high-five BMWs and wearing all these fancy suits. He was very humble and always willing to serve the society and never showing off about it. And that is something that youngsters really loved about him around the country. People don't know this, that Manohar Parrikar has a brother who runs a very, very, very tiny store in Goa selling masalas and dals and things like that. And these things are almost impossible around the world. If you are related to a political figure, you're part of that elite background. So there are very few leaders like this around the world that have really inspired youngsters. Now, I also want to focus a little bit on the young leaders that are actually bringing about change. So how many of us are familiar with Ankit Quadra? Does anyone know Ankit Quadra? We don't know him. Does anyone know a young environmentalist from Germany called Felix? Do we know this guy? No one knows it. Well, these are the real young leaders of tomorrow. Ankit Quadra is a young Indian boy from Delhi who was at an Indian family wedding when he saw tons of food at the end of the wedding going waste. 10, 50, 100 kilos of food. He went and asked the caterers what's going to happen with this food, and it was all going waste. On his way back, he crossed tons of slums and a lot of people across the street, on the streets, hungry and without food. What did he decide to do? He started an organization called Feeding India that till today has served millions of meals across our country solely by going to weddings, restaurants, parties and events and collecting all the old food from there and getting it served across the country to the people who really need it. Young leaders like Felix in Germany. Felix was I think only 10 or 11 when he came up with this bizarre idea of planting 1 million saplings. As of today, he's planted over 10 million saplings around the world with an aim to plant 1 trillion saplings, which is almost 13 or 14 saplings per person on this planet. These are the young leaders that are the leaders of tomorrow, and these are the young leaders youngsters really look up to. We have, now when you talk about a young leader like Malala, we all know her. She's working towards quality education for the girl child, not only in Pakistan, not only in India, but around the world. And I believe these young leaders need to get that opportunity in the politics, in parliament, to be a part of the political system around the world. In India this year, 2019 elections, we have had the biggest number of first-time voters. We've had approximately 1.5 crore people in our country who are between the age of 18 to 20 who are coming out to vote for the first time. And the problem with our country is we, as Raghav said, focus on political parties. So youngsters don't know this. They, for example, let's take the example of India. If they love Prime Minister Modi, they would be willing to vote for BJP solely because of him, which is not the way you vote. The way you vote is you look for the local candidate of your area, of your city, of your locality, and you figure out the work the 2-3 candidates from the different parties have done. Youngsters don't know this. But if youngsters were taught, if in school we were not taught, personally I studied business management in 11th and 12th grade, and I was literally taught the importance of a shake hand. I was taught if you have a firm shake hand, you come off as a brilliant, confident young person. Instead of that, if we were actually taught on how to vote, I think that is something that would have gone way more far, would have actually improved our country on another level. So I believe if youngsters are really given this opportunity to enter parliament, to be a part of politics, and I am not, when I say I want youngsters to be a part of this, I am not saying that the older people, the people with more experience should not. I am for that as well. But what I'm saying is that everyone should get an opportunity. Youngsters should learn from these older people who have been in this space from a longer time. Older people and the people who are in this field from a longer time should take in inputs from youngsters and then work together on a joint basis. Like Raghav said, there are tons of people, there have been tons of examples when senior lawmakers or diplomats have passed such statements that have really, taken the countries aback, that have been extremely shocking. If we were to bring in young leaders who could actually highlight the issues of today, which could actually help the older people understand the youth perspective of countries around the world, I think that would go a longer way as well. So I am completely for bringing in youth leaders and youngsters in politics, and I believe if we do that, we can go without leaps and bounds, we can go a long way further, and our countries can grow double or at a triple pace. If you think the politics or the parliament or the governing bodies in our countries are good, I'd like to finally leave you with a quote that Aristotle once said: "Good isn't good enough if it can be better, and better isn't good enough if it can be best." So if we can bring in these youth leaders for tomorrow to be a part of politics now and help them learn from these leadership activities today, and by the age of 20, 25, 30, we already have them at senior leadership positions, I think countries, cities and states can grow at a 10x pace, and we can have a more sustainable future for our planet and for our human race. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So what we're thinking now is we can do a quick Q&A where we can ask each other questions, we can bring in questions from you all, and we can have a quick discussion. So do you have any questions from you all? Or is there anything you all think here?
So what platforms are you for? Are you based in the UK?
Based on
In London. So what is your immediate platform that you think you need to be on to also you have all these ideologies, ideas that can be implemented for sure. It's looking very bright. What would you get on to immediately in India and for you, Raghav, Sankalp in India and Raghav in UK? Do you know your journey, your direction?
Alright. The saddest part of our country, and this is not only in the field of politics, it is in any field. We could look at the film fraternity or any field. Generally, youngsters that are coming in have a background of parents that are in the same field. So the young leaders of today that are into politics are actually sons of former MLAs or MPs or ministers, which is extremely sad for me. I mean, I'm not saying that these young leaders aren't good enough, but what I'm saying is the young leaders that have come without a political background and are actually going to be young leaders of tomorrow, they need to get this opportunity. So I have had the distinct pleasure to interact with President Obama and Vice President Al Gore and brilliant young leaders, brilliant political figures from around the world, former Prime Ministers of Nepal, of India, Dr. Tharoor. So what I am trying to work on now is I am trying to give these young leaders an opportunity to actually understand politics, to actually get the opportunity to meet these political leaders and work with them. So political leaders don't, like we have internships in every field, there's nothing like that in the field of politics. And that is also whatever little is present is only for those blessed few, you know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring some of these young leaders, some of these political figures who are doing exceedingly well and are loved by the youth, and giving the youth an opportunity to come and work with them, understand the work they're doing and learn from their examples.
How is that bridge going to be that gap going to be bridged?
So I'm trying, I think personally the only way forward is we don't need dialogue, we don't need anything, we need action. So what I'm trying to do, I feel the only thing I am able to do is give these youth leaders an opportunity like 2 months. You know, we have tons of these model United Nations. Give them leadership opportunities, give them an opportunity to work with these political figures and understand the work they're doing, work with them on a daily basis, and whatever they can learn from that, hopefully grow through that.
I'll come to your question in a second. I'll answer this lady. I'll take your question.
Yeah,
And I'm just going to come to you. I know you've got great questions. We were at the seminar together yesterday, so I'm really excited to hear from you in a second. So for me, in terms of like the journey ahead, I don't think anybody can ever know what's going to come next. This was really exciting. I wish I had a plan. With anything I've done, it happened just in life never goes according to plan. But in terms of what I see, even for myself in politics now and going forward, the reason I say 20 years is that I'm sure it's the same in Indian politics, but in Britain, it really is a ruthless environment. And you can come, you can go like that. You can come in, build up your brand, build up your name, and you can get wiped out. What I feel one of my strengths personally is being a coach is really understanding people. I really feel there's not enough people in politics that really understand psychology, actually understand people. From, if you look at Britain right now, for example, they're talking about the knife crime going on. What they're doing is just they're looking at putting more policemen on the streets. That's addressing the symptoms, not the cause. The issue isn't the number of policemen, it's a psychology issue. It's a children feeling safe issue. It's providing education. So these are the longer term strategies. So for me to really enable the small, I want to work with, let's say, independent groups that aren't so party focused. Because a lot of parties, all they're doing is saying, oh, it's this party's fault, that's party's fault. They're blaming each other. I just think if they stopped doing that, came together, and actually put that energy on working on real solutions, we could be more innovative than we ever have been. Instead of wasting all this energy blaming one party or the other. So for me, it's working with independent groups that are working on a very policy level. Policies around environmental change, policies around housing, policies around mental health. Mental health is one of the big ones that I'm really working on today because it's massive. There's more mental health issues occurring around the world, higher suicide rate. So for me right now, what I do in coaching, I want to build up what I'm doing just over time so that one day when I do enter the political field, I've built up the reputation, I understand people, built up the contacts, but I can bring more people with me and work with more people to create greater change. So it's a longer term vision. It does take a little while for the ship to turn, but it's happening. So it's slow and steady. So just to finish, I've got a great contact in the House of Parliament. She does work on mental health. And as she spoke to her, so I said, what's the best route? And she said, go slow and steady. Because right now, if the government don't want something to happen, they will not let it happen. Even if it's for the greater good, they're very agenda driven. There's a lot of things I've heard behind the scenes that are horrifying. Obviously, I can't talk about it because it'll be a record, but it's pretty scary what the government do when they really want to do something. And the things they stop happening, that could actually serve the greater good. So it's just slow and steady. Any question?
So I've got two questions for the both of you and one question specifically for Sankar. So the two questions are, what do you think is the right time to get into politics and don't be step into it? Because it's like, the barriers of nepotism are everywhere. Either the film industry or the politics of the country. Nepotism is everywhere, right? So like, how do we get into politics? What is the right age to get into politics? That's my first question. And the second question is, as like the youth of the country, you feel that no party is good enough to take care of the country, and most of the youth end up, pressing the none of the above candidates for the option, which is called Nota in the country. So we don't vote for BJP, nor Congress, or none of the other parties, like whatever's there. So what do you think is the solution to that? The third question, just specifically for Sankar, is what is the Such Foundation and like what do you do for the people and how can we join it?
I wish we had none of the above in Britain. That'd make it more interesting. We'll take one or the other. We don't vote at all. Okay, so the first one was, what's the right time to get into politics?
So how do we get into it?
And how? So you could be in politics right now and just turned up at one of the parties' events that they're running. Or you could go to an independent group. That's being in politics. There's being in politics and being an MP. But one of my goals is to be an MP, and that's a longer route of establishing yourself in Parliament. But to be in politics, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the case of India, but it's just finding out who are the people on a very local level, what are they doing? And in that region, there's so many ways you can support them. I myself have gone to a couple of parties' call centres, we can just pick up the phone, make calls, you create people, you meet activists, you find out what's going on, and you get really immersed on a very, let's say, on a deep political level. You find out what's happening within the party versus people that just read the papers. It's such a difference about what's happening in the party and the people involved, the conversations they have. They're so much richer. So what I'd say is, when is the right time? Well, if you've got a voice, if you're passionate about change, government needs you, Parliament needs you, the world needs you. I know it sounds cheesy, but now is the best time. If you really care about making change, we need more people that are in politics that care about making change. So I'd say now. And how do you get into it? Find your local office, local groups, And that's the first question. Before we talk about the second, you can answer the first one.
Alright, I think you could sit down, that's alright. So what I think, I think there is no right age of getting into politics, but when I want youngsters to actually be a part of it, I think if you're really interested and you've understood early on that politics is the thing for me, you also need to figure out what exactly. Because as we were talking a couple of minutes back, politics is very broad. You cannot just think of the fact that you want to be a part of a governing body or you want to be an MP or an MLA. What is it that you actually want to change? And once the earlier you're able to figure that out, I think that's when you yourself can decide the age. So for me personally, I decided I wanted to work on the environment at the age of 10 or 12. And that therefore, at the age of 18, 19, 20, I am able to run an organization in 7 countries, etc. And I'll tell you about that a little later. But if I had decided and understood that I want to do this social work or this work towards sustainability at the age of 18, you need to perfect yourself and then eventually get into whatever it is that suits you. So as he said, the right time to get into politics would be the earlier you understand and the earlier you can groom yourself perfectly. I think that is really important. So you could be a brilliant social worker who is, creating massive change, but a pathetic public speaker. And public speaking is extremely important when it comes to politics. You need to influence your people, you need to influence the masses, you need to influence the society. So you could be a brilliant public speaker who is doing something of another sort, policy, this, that. So as early as you figure out what you want to do and the earlier you figure out that politics is for me, then you need to figure out what are the 10 things you need to know and understand to be the politician that you envision someone to be, and that's when you give yourself time to perfect yourself in these 10, 12 things, and that's when you get into politics. As for the second part, how you do it, I cannot give you an exact answer for that, but what I think you can do is probably get in touch with me. I can help you out to get in touch with certain people in the political field, people that you would probably look up to or you probably like, or political figures that have inspired you, and I can put you in touch with them, and that gets you a notch above, to get into politics. So that's something I can do for you. And as for the third part, do you have a favorite party? You don't have to answer this. You don't. And which part of India are you from?
I'm from Assam.
Assam. Who's your local candidate?
From which party?
Any. Tell me 3.
So from BJP, we have Parvananda Kumar. Congress and AGP, I have no idea what's happening.
Right.
Because I'm really not into that drama that's going on in
Got it.
television.
Got it. And I mean, that's fair enough. But the problem is, most of us youngsters that like to press the nota, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What I'm trying to say is, as I mentioned in my speech, everyone wants to vote for the party, which does not make sense at all. At all. I do not believe in that at all. I mean, I may like a certain political figure, but I do not like that party or all the other political figures in that party. So our youngsters do not find out about these candidates of their locality who are doing work. You could like a party that is probably the governing party of our country right now, but your local candidate is from the opposite party or the opposition who's actually doing more work than the governing party. So you need to figure out who your local candidate is and the work they are doing and vote for them, and not for a party that you like in general. That doesn't make sense, and that is a mistake that youngsters often make, these first-time voters often make. So that is something I think that is really important.
I was going to add something to that, because it's such a great point. And I'm honestly stuck, because I don't want to say I lean towards any party, but if I look at the 2 major parties again in the United Kingdom, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, right, Theresa May has completely royally screwed up Brexit. It's honestly, I wouldn't even trust her to make me some toast after how she dealt with Brexit. It's horrific how it's impacted the UK. The problem is when she goes, I don't know which person or party will take over. There right now isn't anybody credible, in my opinion, in the political field that's really giving a voice. So what do? Like in England, we don't have the no voting option. It's just you just don't turn up and vote. It's not compulsory to vote. So it's just such a tricky one. And I think parties will learn from this in the future if they're a little bit wise. And as more of the youngsters come to politics that are a little bit entrepreneurial, they'll see there's a hidden gap in the market from people that aren't voting. If they are heard, they will then vote. So let the parties wake up to that slightly. But I love the suggestion of actually getting involved with things that you're passionate about. And that's something itself that will help facilitate change. It really will.
Okay. And so your third question was what the Swachh Foundation does. So are you familiar with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? So the United Nations launched an Agenda 2030 which consists of 17 goals which the countries of the United Nations have accepted and adopted. So the aim here is to, what the Such Foundation aims to do is work on each of these goals. So to give you an example, since you don't know, it could be working towards the environment, towards water, gender equality, human rights, working on plantations or anything, any of these 17 goals, peace, harmony, anything. What the Such Foundation does is work solely with youngsters and young leaders around the world. So I'll give you an example. Let's say we've chosen the next 3 months to be on climate action, which is goal 13, if I'm not wrong. So you could be a brilliant young leader from Nigeria who's working towards the environment. What we do is we spend a couple of weeks sitting down with you, planning out a project with you that will affect the environment, that will be better for the environment, which is easy to implement and has a lasting impact. Now, once we figured out this project, if you were to do it by yourself, you would do it in your locality or your city of Nigeria. What we would help you do is get this project implemented in every country where our organization is present. So, for example, we did a project for the environment on plantations where we planted saplings in a style called the Miyawaki, which is a Japanese form of plantation where within 10 years you have a 40-year-old forest and creates an entire ecosystem and you have animals. So when we planted about 3,000 saplings in Bangalore, we planted 50 in Delhi, 100 in Bombay, 500 in Nigeria, another 50 in Nepal. So wherever we are present, we get all of these drives implemented. Similarly, in India, foreigners may not know much about this, but Indians do. Menstruation is considered a disease in our country almost. Young women, girls don't even know about it from the rural background. And in the urge to save money, of not buying pads, they want to save that money, and later on leads to diseases that are triple the cost. So, for example, on menstruation, we work on menstruation education, on menstrual hygiene, where in these cities we get local public speakers and social activists to talk about these issues and explain to the women what this entire concept is, how it actually works, and give them the basic knowledge that they need. And also after that, we distribute sanitary pads, which are organic and biodegradable for all these women around the country. So once that is happening, for example, as I said in Bangalore, there are young leaders doing it in Bombay, Delhi, and around the world. So for all these 17 goals, we come up with projects and get them implemented solely by youngsters. So it's youth ideas implemented by youth around the world. That's the Such Foundation.
One thing I want to say before we wrap up, now, is that something I'm doing is I'm passionate about mental health. Like as a coach, mental health is so big in London. It's become scary how many youngsters are committing suicide, and it breaks my heart. It really does break my heart because mental health is such a huge. I don't want to say issue. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity. I think the government need to address. So what I'm doing myself is I'm going to get back to London. I'm finding a few MPs that I actually resonate with. That I think actually come from the heart, and I'm going to write them a letter. Just meet with them in person. I'd find an MP you're really inspired by. Just write them a letter, because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And say, can I buy you a coffee? Can I meet you for half an hour? I really love this policy, this policy, this policy. I think it's amazing. Could I meet you too? And they're very humbled by that. So I want to find out what is the best way as a coach I can help with mental health. Because I feel right now, what we've got in the UK is not sustainable. Pumping people with pills is not sustainable. And in fact, it's just giving them a couple of insights that can make a difference. So just, if you take one step, reach out to someone.
Do we have any other last questions before we wrap up? All right.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very